Hello everyone, DM Dungeon Mastery here yet again with another episode of Creatures But Better. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not familiar with what I do with this series is I take a creature from D&D 5th edition that I think is a little bit boring and I try to give it some of my own little bit of flair, and I add abilities that I think would be fun to run and just overall make the creature more flavorful. If you disagree with what I have, or you think you could do better, give me some criticism down below. Maybe tell me what you would do differently. Before we jump into this creature stat block, I would like to read a tidbit of lore from the 2014 Monster Manual. The Bar-Lguras do not have a lot of lore for the 2014 Monster Manual, but let's read with what we are working with. We have the Bar-Lgura. The Bar-Lgura represents the savagery and brutality of the Abyss. Bar-Lguras gather in packs to take down tougher foes, keep gruesome trophies from their victories, and decorate their territory with such objects. A Bar-Lgura looks like a hulking orangutan with a gruesome drooping visage and tusks jutting from its jaw. Standing under 8 feet tall, it has broad shoulders and weighs 650 pounds. It moves apishly along the ground, and it climbs with great speed and agility. Interesting. So it's a giant ape from the hells. Well, a giant orangutan from the hells, if we're going off of that description. Let's look at the 2014 creature first before we look at my creatures and see what Wizards did with their version. Hey, listen! This is Adbreak DM Dungeon Mastery, and I'm grateful for your support. Check out my Patreon for exclusive content like monthly battle maps, patron-only voting, and access to private Discord channels for feedback and sneak peeks on upcoming reworks. Anyways, thanks for being awesome. Back to the video. Okay, Wizards of the Coast, let's see if I'm picking up what you're putting down. So Bar-Lguras are large fiends. They are demons. They are chaotic evil. In the cosmology of the fiends, demons are typically chaotic evil, while devils are lawful evil. So demons are more destructive and chaotic, while devils adhere to more laws and societal norms, quote unquote. Basically, they enslave more, while demons would probably rather savagely tear you limb from limb rather than enslave you. We have an armor class of 15, natural armor, hit points of 68, 8d10 plus 24, 40 movement speed, 40 climbing speed. Pretty cool. I like things that can climb around and stuff when it warrants it, and it makes sense. So Bar-Lguras being apish and orangutan-like, that's a cool thing to have. Let's look at the ability scores. We have 18 strength, 15 dex, 16 con, 7 intelligence, 14 wisdom, 9 charisma. So we got something that's a lot more brute force than it is smarts, but it is wise. Wiser than the average humanoid, but dumber and not as charismatic as the average humanoid. These are horse-sized gorillas, so that's nothing to scoff at still. That's pretty scary. We have saving throw proficiencies, which is cool. Most of the creatures that I've seen in the Monster Manual, you would think would have a saving throw proficiency, and then it doesn't. Like a hill giant doesn't have strength saving throw proficiency for some reason, but you would think all giants would have a strength saving throw proficiency, so it's a refresher to see that this has saving throw proficiencies. We have plus 5 perception and stealth to the skills. We have damage resistances to cold, fire, and lightning. I think those are pretty cool. The Abyss is more than likely very cold, but it's implied that the Bar-Lguras live in these like abyssal jungles, so I don't know how an abyssal jungle would be weather and climate wise. I would imagine very muggy, very humid, but who knows? It's the Abyss. It could be anything. It's chaos down there. So we have an immunity to poison and poisoned, so it cannot be poisoned, and it cannot be hurt by poison damage. It has blind sight of 30 feet. I didn't see anything that states why it has blind sight of 30 feet in its lore, unless I just didn't see it, but it has a dark vision of 120 feet, passive perception of 15, abyssal, it speaks, and it has a telepathic speaking range of 120 feet, so they can telepathically speak abyssal into your brain or other Bar-Lgura's brains, so they could silently sneak up and ambush you without ever speaking a word that you can hear, so that's pretty interesting. CR5 monster, I have yet to see that, so let's get into the special traits next. Alright, so the Bar-Lguras can innately cast spells. So their spellcasting ability goes off of their wisdom. Spell save DC is 13. Once a day each, they can cast Entangle and Phantasmal Force. And twice a day each, they can cast Disguise Self and Invisibility. Those are interesting to me. Disguise Self is implying that the Bar-Lgura could potentially turn itself into a humanoid and walk the mortal plane if it wanted to. So Bar-Lguras, though they have low intelligence, seem to have a deviousness about them if you play them right. They are interesting demons. They have Reckless, which is a scary ability, so this is a very barbaric-like ability. It fits that savageness that it says in the lore. So the Bar-Lgura can choose to gain advantage on all melee weapon attacks it makes during its turn, but then until it comes to its next turn, all attack rolls against it have advantage. So it's reckless. You try to hit something savagely and recklessly, other things are going to have an easier time taking advantage of that and hitting you back. We have a running leap trait here. The Bar-Lgura's jump is 40 feet high, and its jump is up to 20 feet when it has a running start. So pretty standard ape-like traits. Well, that's an ape-like trait, not the spellcasting. Let's look at the actions next and see what we got down there. Alright, so we got multi-attack. So the Bar-Lgura makes 3 attacks, 1 with its bite, 2 with its fists. At least they have 2 different attacks. That's about the best thing I could say here. They have spellcasting, which is why I think they kind of left it up to the dungeon master to try to use them creatively. So they have a bite attack and a fist attack. The bite attack does more damage than the fist attack. The bite does 2d6 plus 4 piercing, and the fist does 1d10 plus 4 bludgeoning. This is a large creature. This is a 650 pound hulking orangutan demon from the abyss. And you're telling me when they punch somebody that is the size of you and me, we're not going to get thrown backwards off our feet? We're not going to get slammed to the ground prone? I think big creatures that are larger than any size that is larger than medium, when they hit you, I just feel like it should knock you down, knock you back. Anything that shows its size is not medium. Because if you look at this like this, if you just change the word fist into glaive, and then you change the size to medium, and you change the name Bar-Lgura to orc, what difference do we have in the multi-attacks? It's really nothing different. It's just an orc. I like to use orcs as the example because that's just a simplified term, and some people get mad when I do that, but I'm just using it as an example as to why I think creatures that are bigger size than you need to have that represented in their attacks. That's my design philosophy. Let's get into my Bar-Lgura stat block and see what I did differently. Haha, here we are. Big 650 pound orangutan demon coming up. So my Bar-Lgura, you will notice in the name, I've changed it back to how it was worded and spelled. Well, how it was structured in 3.5 was Bar-Lgura. I think that sounds cooler, so I'm putting it like that. let's go from top to bottom with my stat block. Nothing changed with the AC, HP, and speed. Nothing changed with the ability scores, but we do have some changes in the skills department. So I gave it an athletics and an intimidation skill, because athletics just makes sense. It's an ape-like creature. It's swinging around on trees. Just in its day-to-day life, it would probably develop a skill with athleticism, and it has intimidation. It's a big scary demon. It should have intimidation. That's my reasoning behind it. Nothing more, nothing less. Its stealth has gone up because I had to increase the challenge rating for what I've added to the creature stat block. Let's look at damage vulnerabilities. I gave it vulnerability to attacks with cold iron weapons. Now, this is optional. You can remove this from the stat block if you don't want to deal with cold iron weapons. Cold iron weapons are not just iron weapons that are cold. They are a specific material. It's actually used to suppress magic on mages or damage fey creatures and demons. Fey creatures and demons have an innate weakness to this, and it doesn't do cold damage. It's just considered cold iron. That's just how it is worded. Because you'll see right below that damage resistances, they have resistance to cold damage, but that's not the same thing, even though it kind of sounds a little confusing. But it's a special material made for weapons. So, well, not made for weapons, but weapons can be made out of it. It's a special material. There's a wiki for D&D. I would type in cold iron wiki and look it up. It'll explain what it is to you. It's a pretty cool thing, I think. I like esoteric little ways to get the advantage on creatures like this, so I wanted to put that in there. If you disagree with it, you can remove it, but everything else has stayed the same, other than under damage resistances. You'll now see they have resistance to all non-magical damage. Demons and devils are all creatures of magic in nature, so I think you should really have a magical weapon to damage them. I didn't want to give them just straight up immunity to non-magic damage. I feel like greater demons should have that, but, you know, a regular anything from the 9 hells should have resistance to non-magical damage, in my opinion. And excuse me, sorry for coughing. So that's gonna do it, other than I did remove its blind sight, but I did replace it with something else on the stat block, so don't freak out on me yet. Don't get your pitchforks and torches yet. Let's get into the special traits. Okay, so we got Reckless, that hasn't changed. We do have our first unique special trait. This is called Pin. Now, it states in their combat tactics on the wiki that Bar-Lguras will often pin a creature down while other Bar-Lguras surround and eviscerate it. So I wanted to give it something that represented that on its stat block. Easiest way to do it, I gave it Pin. So when the Bar-Lgura grapples a prone creature, the creature is restrained until the grapple ends. Pretty straightforward. Its grapple gives you the restrained condition if you're prone, which is pretty bad because it gives all creatures advantage on melee attack rolls against you. Pretty sure it's melee. It might actually be all attack rolls, but still, it's pretty dangerous. Let's look at Demon Sight. This is the second ability I gave it. There is a thing called Devil Sight, but this is just something I came up with it. You can change the name if you need to, but Demon Sight. Magical darkness doesn't impede the Bar-Lgura's dark vision. It can see invisible creatures and objects as if they were visible. It states that directly in their lore, that they can see invisible creatures. The darkness comes from something else. We'll get to that. Let's look at camouflage here. So, Bar-Lgura's skin and fur shifts colors to blend seamlessly with its surroundings, granting advantage on stealth checks to hide. They can change colors like a chameleon. It's not a full array of colors, but it's just enough to help them blend in natural environments, which would be like jungle environments. This is the abyss that we're talking about, so nothing is really natural, but they can they can kind of have like a chameleon-esque changing of their colors of their fur, which is a pretty cool, unique thing for a creature. You wouldn't expect this creature to have something like that, but that's loreful. That's a lore-accurate ability. Running Leap has not changed. I did add this ability. This is Pounce. So if this completely plays off of the Running Leap ability. So if the Bar-Lgura makes a high jump and hits a creature with a fist attack, the creature takes an additional 2d10 bludgeoning damage and is reeling. What reeling does, I put it in the parentheses and italics, so this is a status effect that I came up with. I actually may have stole it. I stole this from something. I probably stole it from Baldur's Gate 3's conditions. I like to do that recently. It's kind of fun to add new conditions. But so what it does is that you suffer a -1 penalty to attack rolls and saving throws until the end of your next turn. If you get critically hit, the penalty increases to -2. Now, I would say this ability stacks because it can only come from Pounce. So you could technically keep accruing these penalties during a round of combat, but they fall off when they get to your turn, so I don't think that's that bad. I believe that does it for our special traits. We can now get into the actions. Alright, starting off with a bang here. The newer editions of the Dungeons and Dragons monster manuals have been putting spell casting under the actions, which I kind of agree with. I think that makes sense. It cleans up Statblock, makes it less confusing for newer Dungeon Masters, so I moved its spell casting into the actions. It has a new spell. It has Dispel Magic, and you'll see invisibility is missing. Now you might be saying, DM Dungeon Master, you're nerfing this creature. Don't worry, I didn't nerf it. I made it quite scary, actually. 650-pound gorilla monster is going to be quite scary if it comes from me. So let's move to the multi-attack. It makes 1 attack with its bite and 2 with its fists, but it can replace both fist attacks with a pummeling slam. Hard to give creatures extra actions when they don't typically carry weapons, but you can just give them different things to do with their fists and their bite attacks and stuff like that. So that's a tip from me to you. If you have a creature like a dragon who doesn't typically have weapons and you're trying to like rack your mind on what you can do, instead of trying to forcefully add something like a headbutt ability, just give them a different thing that they can do with their fists or their bite. So the fist attack now does the same damage, but if you're a large or smaller creature, you must make a DC 15 strength save. On a failure, you fall prone. This is gonna synergize with its own stat block. You'll see as we move down. If somebody did point out that if you would cast the reduce spell on the Bar-Lgura or the enlarge spell, that the large or smaller should change. I have it in there as basically just a thing to simplify that, but it's up to your discretion. If somebody reduces the Bar-Lgura to a medium creature, just change large to medium or smaller creatures, just so it makes sense. That's a very niche scenario. It's not something that's going to come up every time you fight this, but if it does, that's kind of why you, as the Dungeon Master, are adjudicating the game, so you can adjust that stuff on the fly. The bite attack does more damage now. Instead of 2d6, does 2d8 piercing damage. Now, I don't know why I increased the damage. I just thought it should be higher than 2d6. It's a giant gorilla from the 9 hells. If I haven't said that enough, take a shot every time I say that. Anyways, pummeling slam. This is its double. Visualize it's taking both of its fists and it's slamming down on you. However, you'll notice it says 1 prone target, so it can only use this if the creature it's attacking is prone. So this does 2d12 bludgeoning damage, and if the creature is large or smaller, it has to make a DC 15 con save. On a failure, it is stunned until the end of its next turn. So it's running up on you, takes both of its fists, and it slams them down on you. It's enough to stun you, literally. That's a pretty cool ability. Now this is my favorite ability coming up next. All the other abilities are cool and all, but Come on. I gotta give the monkey an ability to throw its feces. Big monkey moment here. So this is demonic feces, okay? It's a recharge of 5 to 6. You know, he's gotta let that food digest before he can keep throwing scat. So it's a +7 to hit. Got a range of 20 to 40 feet. It does 2d6 poison damage, and then it also does 2d6 fire damage on a hit. So his poo is very, very hot, and it's very poisonous because it's coming out of a demon. God only knows what a demon eats in the abyss, right? So when you get hit with this, you have to make a DC 14 con save. If you fail, you're poisoned for 1 hour. You can repeat the save at the end of each of your turns to end. And then if you succeed the first save, you just resist the poison effect, but you still take the full damage. So you still take 2d6 poison plus 2d6 fire damage. And you'll see that there is a modifier for both of those. That's coming from the Bar-Lgura's con modifier. The shit is coming from his body, so it's probably coming from his constitution. So I think it makes sense. I think that's a cool ability. It's flavorful. I did originally have a rock in here, so you just threw a large rock, and then I thought about it for a minute, and I was like, wait a minute, I gotta give the monkey from hell an ability to throw his own shit. So there you go. That's gonna make this immediately an iconic enemy that your players will probably laugh at whenever they get hit with that ability. And describing it in combat will also be equally as funny. So let's get to this is the 3 last abilities on the stat block here. This ability is going to change how this creature works. This is going to make it very difficult. If you've ever fought the Dark Mantle, which is the octopus from the Underdark that latches onto your head and it makes a darkness aura around you, that's like a puzzle monster, and it's very hard to kill. Now you have that same ability on the Bar-Lgura. It can do this according to its lore, and this is just a spell-like ability. This is not a spell. So it's a 15-foot radius of magical darkness that surrounds him. It lasts up to 10 minutes. Dark vision cannot penetrate this darkness, and it dispels any light from spells of 2nd level or lower that it overlaps. So, you know, he makes a giant blackened cloud of darkness around him, and he runs up to you and he starts beating on you, and you can't see him. He can see you because of his demon sight ability, but he could still be blinded, so keep that in mind. He's not immune to blind anymore with blind sight. Yeah, darkness aura is very, very strong, so be careful when you use multiple of these, but now at higher levels, these are going to be much more formidable. Much more formidable. But these are concentrations, so if you hit him, he can drop concentration on these. And it takes a whole action, so he's sacrificing both of his attacks for that turn to cast Darkness Aura. His second attack, or not his second attack, but his second ability is Invisibility. This is the same way. He turns invisible for up to 1 hour, but whenever he attacks, the effect ends early if he attacks or casts a spell. Now, if you don't know and you're a new Dungeon Master, when something is invisible and it attacks something that cannot see it, it gets advantage on those attacks until it makes that first attack. So, yeah, it's gonna get some pretty good damage in, and this is a good ability to get out of harm's way too, and they can just do this. This is what makes demons unpredictable, chaotic, very difficult to deal with. The creature has chaotic in its alignment. I think this is a good ability. I mean, it's already a more formidable monster with these 3 things that I've added, and I didn't even get to the last one yet. The last action that we have here is Teleport. He can only use this 2 times a day, okay? But yes, those of you that know about this ability, I brought it back just for you and for me because I want to run this against my players. So this makes this creature very terrifying. The Bar-Lgura teleports up to 60 feet to a location it can see. Large or smaller grappled creatures are teleported with the Bar-Lgura. So, if he grapples you and he teleports with you, he can take you with him. And if he does that to the wizard and he teleports behind his front line into the back where there's 3 more Bar-Lguras standing, the wizard's gonna not have a good day, we'll put it that way. There's one final thing I added to this creature stat block. It's called bonus action. It is called kidnap. I believe I took this from the 3.5 stat block, but as a bonus action, he can grapple something. It's not an auto grapple though, so it's still just the grapple action. I worded it like this just so it wasn't confusing, because I had it in there originally. The Bar-Lgura uses the grapple as a bonus action, but I feel like some people would interpret that as it auto grapples you, which it doesn't. So he initiates a grapple contest, and I just have the rules on how grapple works. So pretty damn cool, if I say so myself. That's a pretty fun, lot more versatile creature than it was beforehand. Now, let's look at the next version of this I had, because some of you might be seeing this and saying, well, this is too difficult now. I'm never going to get to run this. It's going to be too far into my campaign. I made a lesser Bar-Lgura for those of you that want to run one of these a lot quicker. Alright, so we got our lesser Bar-Lgura here. I am not sure off the top of my head how demons work in terms of their physical makeup. I'm pretty sure demons they start off at a certain demon type, and then as they grow in the ranks, they become a different demon. So I don't think demons are born through reproduction. I think they're born in other ways. So a lesser Bar-Lgura might not necessarily be lore accurate, but you could still say that these are just weaker versions of the Bar-Lguras. These are the runts of the quote-unquote tribe that they have. So everything about this creature stat block is just scaled down from the first one I just showed you. Excuse me. So we look down from our armor class and hit points. Those are lower, so it's 14 hit points, or 14 AC and the 32 hit points. So that's much less than the original. We have much lower saving throws, skills, damage, vulnerabilities, and resistances are still the same. I said this is a CR3 creature because I had in mind that there is a spell called Summon Greater Demon, and people wouldn't be able to summon the Bar-Lgura if it was a CR6 now. So I made a CR3 variant that you could summon that still does a ton of stuff compared to the original. It's just not going to deal as much damage as my reworked version. Still gonna do a lot though. Still gonna definitely put the work in for you. And then if it turns on you, well, you're gonna have a problem on your hands. And a 650 pound orangutan from the abyss sized problem on your hands. One thing I forgot to mention, this is a medium sized creature. So this is a much smaller Bar-Lgura physically. So looking at everything else, all the special traits are the same. It does have its pounce damage reduced, and you'll see now this does not give you the negatives to your saving throws, but it does knock you prone. Because if we go to the actions now, really quickly looking at the spell casting, you can see way less spells, only 2 different types of spells it can cast. You'll look at the fist and see the fist no longer knocks you prone. It's a medium creature. He has to throw his whole body weight into you to knock you prone now. The bite attack does less damage, does 2d6 instead of 2d8. His fist does 2d4 instead of 1d10, sorry. His pummeling slam does less damage. Instead of 2d12, does 2d10. And it doesn't stun you now when you fail your con save, it cripples you, which reduces your movement speed by 10 until you receive magical healing. His demonic feces does less damage, does 2d4 instead of 2d6. And pretty much everything else is the same. The teleport range has been reduced to 30 feet from 60. Invisibility instead of 1 hour is now 1 minute. And the darkness aura is the same. I should probably set that to 10-foot radius instead of 15 for this Bar-Lgura. But yeah, just a much weaker version, so you can run these against a lower level party. CR3 implies that it is a boss monster for 5 level 3 players, I believe. That's how challenge rating is measured. So for 5 level 3 players, this should be a decent fight, even though it's only got 32 hit points, so it could be felled fairly okay. But at that level, they're probably not going to have magical weapons, so they're going to be doing half damage, but the spellcasters will deal full damage. So the spellcasters are going to come alive in a fight against a Bar-Lgura, as long as they don't get kidnapped and teleported. Anyways, I did make a greater Bar-Lgura. Wasn't a huge fan of it when I made it. I wasn't as inspired with the big one, but we'll look at it anyways, just in case you want to have a greater Bar-Lgura. I lied to you. We're not going to do a greater Bar-Lgura. Instead, we're going to do a Bar-Lgura that is meant to fight on the front lines of the Blood War. So this is a Bar-Lgura Blood War soldier. Didn't know what else to call it. I was going to call it a troop guardian, but I feel like Blood War soldier conveys the message of what this creature is supposed to be used for. So this Bar-Lgura is way less mobile than the other ones. So this has demonic half plate on, which gives it an 18 armor class, which is normal plate armor for a human. 68 hit points, so it's the same as the regular Bar-Lgura that I showed you. This is just one that is meant to be a warrior. Everything is the same until we get down into the special traits here. We have oversized arms. This is actually a 3.5 trait for the Bar-Lgura. So it says that they can wield weapons up to 2 size categories larger than itself. It can also catch and throw rocks or similar objects up to 1 size category smaller than itself, using them as ranged weapons. While holding its weapon, the Bar-Lgura's climbing speed is 0. So it's holding a very big weapon. It cannot climb while it's holding a weapon, but in an open battlefield, it's probably not going to be climbing to begin with. And you'll see I gave it Polearm Master. So interesting. Moving into the actions, nothing has changed with the spell casting. Yes, nothing has changed with the spell casting. We get into the actions, the attack actions. Gargantuan Glaive. So this is a weapon that is meant for something bigger than a cloud giant. It says that they can wield them, so I'm gonna do something ridiculous and I'm gonna give them a gargantuan weapon. So a normal glaive does 1d10 damage. A gargantuan is 3 sizes larger than a normal weapon, so it does 3 extra d10s worth of damage for a total of 4d10 damage on a hit. It has a 15-foot reach, and it also can knock you prone on a failed strength save. Pretty scary. But keep in mind, Polearm Master, the feat that I gave it, whenever a creature enters its reach while it has its weapon in its hand, he makes an attack of opportunity. Or he can if he wants to. So he can knock you prone before you even get up to him. So when you move within 15 feet of him and he hits you with that gargantuan glaive, it can knock you prone. And then standing up is half of your movement, but you've already moved that turn. So yeah, this is a pretty scary monster for melee characters. Everything else is the same. other than when we get to the bonus actions, it has the Glaive Pommel from Polearm Master. It can make this attack as a bonus action. It does 3d4 bludgeoning damage. And it now has a reaction called Rock Catching, which is similar to the Stone Giant. So it can, if a huge or smaller object is hurled at the Bar-Lgura, it can make a DC 12 Dex save. On a success, it catches the object and takes no bludgeoning damage. And then this is where I recycled my rock throwing idea. So instead of having just a rock attack, if you throw something at him now, he can now retaliate and throw it back at you with a +7, 20/80 range, and it does 2d10 bludgeoning damage on a hit. So this is what I imagine if some greater demon of the abyss would request Bar-Lguras for their frontline soldiers in the Bloodwar. This was just my interpretation of that, because I've never seen some Bloodwar-esque monsters other than bearded devils and ice devils. So that's what my idea was for the Bloodwar soldier variant. I have one more for you, and I took some liberties with this next one, but it was my first time dipping my toe into something very, very strong. So let's look at this next one. So here we are with the final Bar-Lgura. This is a Bar-Lgura Archfiend. So if you're not familiar with what an Archfiend is, this is the top echelon of demons and devils. These are nearly godlike beings in the hells and the abyss. Demons would be abyss lords or demon lords. Devils are usually archdevils. So I just called it an Archfiend. I was going to call it a demon lord Bar-Lgura, but it didn't flow as well as Bar-Lgura Archfiend. But you could take this, take Archfiend out, and give it an actual name and make your own Archfiend. So let's look at this one. This one's a lot scarier. If the other ones were scary, this one is a lot scary. And I tried to keep it in line with the other current demon lords. So I looked at my Volo's Guide to Monsters. Or not Volo's, it was Mordenkainen's. And I tried to balance it based off of the other creatures in that book. But also, I probably made mine a little bit stronger. So I do actually intend to go through all of the big devils and demons and rework them. So, we have a natural armor of 22. So that's already incredibly high. Your low level party, you should not throw this against a party that is lower than 15th level, more than likely. I honestly, probably 15 to 20. That's your range of level you want to throw this up against. We have a 325 hit points, so not very high in the hit point department. In my opinion, characters at 20th level and stuff like that, 15 and up, they can deal so much over 100 damage in a turn for some classes. So my philosophy would be raise that health even higher, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to leave it at 325, which is higher than most of the demon lords that I looked at. Let's look at the absolutely gargantuan stat line here. We have 28 strength, 22 dex, 24 con, 13 intelligence, so it's not very strong. It's not very smart. We have 26 wisdom, 13 charisma, so intelligence and charisma are its weaknesses. We have a strength, saving throw of 16, 13 dex, 14 con, so yeah, it's going to be really hard to get it to fail any constitution save, dex, or strength save. So intelligence and charisma are going to be what you want to focus on for something like this. Still has vulnerability to cold iron. Everything else is the same. I did give it more condition immunities, so charmed, exhaustion, frightened, poisoned. All pretty strong. That's what all the other archdevils have. Let's look at its special traits next. So before I get into the special traits, I gotta back up just slightly. I gave it true sight of 120 feet. So there is no going invisible against this Bar-Lgura. It has true sight, which means it can see you no matter what. Doesn't matter if you're hidden with a spell, invisible, it can see you. So that's pretty scary. Now let's get into the special traits. So it does have greater camouflage. So when it it gets advantage on its stealth check to hide, and then the first attack it makes from stealth each turn deals 3d6 extra damage, so it has sneak attack. Its pounce damage is 3d10 additional damage, and the creature is reeling, so it still has the -1 penalties. All of its weapon attacks are now considered magical, so its fist, its bite, everything is considered magical. It has magic resistance, so it has advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. It has legendary resistance, so yes, the Bar-Lgura Archfiend is a legendary creature. If it fails a saving throw, it can just choose to succeed 3 times a day. That's what protects your big creatures from getting banished, getting held, getting surrounded and pounded by really powerful spells. Usually makes wizard players really mad, usually makes you very happy, so your creature doesn't get cheesed by a really strong spell. This is the final special trait. This is what really is going to make this creature incredibly difficult and very chaotic. I tried to keep the theme of the chaos with this demon. This is Aura of Primal Anger. This comes from 3.5. This used to actually just be on the Bar-Lgura in 3.5. From what I can tell, I was looking at the stat block. The non-demon creatures that start their turn within 20 feet of the Bar-Lgura, it can choose to cause this aura to make the saving throw. But most creatures are going to have to make this save. They have to make a DC 23 Wisdom save. So most creatures are going to fail that. On a failure, the creature goes berserk for 10 minutes, using its action each round to attack the nearest creature with its preferred combat method, continuing to attack new targets if possible. If it can make extra attacks as part of the attack action, it must use those extra attacks, moving to attack the nearest creature after it fells its current target. If it has multiple possible targets, it attacks one at random. On a success, the creature is immune to this aura for the next 24 hours. Calm Emotions ends this effect immediately. So, such a simple little spell, Calm Emotions, but it could be very strong in this fight. I would say if you're going to have your players go up against this, kind of allude to something like that so they would know, but also it would kind of be really interesting if somebody just had Calm Emotions for the whole campaign and then they finally get to use it in a meaningful way with a boss fight where the aura is this incredibly dangerous thing that can cause a TPK on a whim. But let's move into the actions now. So we got much more spells here and a much higher spell save DC. DC 23 for all of its spell save DCs, and its spell attack bonus is plus 15. So it can cast Poison Spray at 17th level and Primal Savagery at 17th level. It has 3 times a day each it can cast Entangle, Phantasmal Force, Dispel Magic, and Grease. 2 times a day each can cast Disguise Self, Fly, Summon Lesser Demons. Once a day each it can cast Cloud Kill and Summon Greater Demon, but it can only summon a Bar-Lgura. So pretty cool spells. I kind of just chose stuff that I thought would be flavorful and useful at the same time. That was my thought process. I didn't really think too much into it, so if you disagree with some of those spells, feel free to change them. Multi-attack has not changed. Its damaging attacks now are going to be much more impactful. So plus 16 to hit, it's really never going to miss an attack with a plus 16 modifier. That's going to be pretty insane. On a hit, it does 3d10 bludgeoning damage, plus 9, so an average of 25 damage per hit. It makes 2 of those a turn, by the way. Larger, smaller creatures have to make a DC 24 strength save. On a failure, they fall prone. If they get hit with this attack and they're already prone, they are now mangled, so their movement speed is reduced by half until they receive magical healing. It's just a little bit of a cherry on top to kick the player while they're down, kind of. It's a mean thing, but this is a creature that's very powerful. Now the bite still doesn't do anything extra, it just does a lot of damage. It does 36 damage on a hit on average from 68. Now it's Pummeling Slam. This is going to be the big scary move that you're going to smile when you hit your players with. This has a reach of 10 feet on one prone target, does 6d12 plus 9 bludgeoning damage. Large or smaller creatures must succeed on a DC 24 Constitution save. On a failure, they are paralyzed for 1 minute. They can repeat that save at the end of each of their turns to end it. So, DC 24 con save, and they get paralyzed when they get hit with that. Now, keep in mind, a paralyzed target is automatically critically hit when they are hit in combat. So, if you get paralyzed and he hits you again, that's 12d12 bludgeoning damage. That's a lot of damage. He is truly savagery and brutality incarnate. And of course, his demonic feces now has no cooldown, and it does a lot more damage. It does 4d6 poison damage and 4d6 fire damage. Target must succeed on a DC 22 con save. On a failure, it is poisoned for the next 24 hours. While poisoned this way, the creature takes 4d6 poison damage at the start of each of its turns. If you succeed, you resist the poison. It has to sacrifice its whole round of actions to use this, I believe, because it can't use this as part of its multi-attack. Yeah, so it's a really strong poison ability, but it's not going to make a lot of damage. Excuse me, it's not going to do... I mean, it does a lot of damage, but it's not doing all of its attacks with this. Now, it has Superior Darkness Aura. This is a 30-foot radius of magical darkness that surrounds the Bar-Lgura. Lasts up to 10 minutes. Dark vision cannot penetrate it, and it dispels any light from spells of 5th level or lower that overlap it now. So it's just a superior version of the Darkness Aura. And now we have Superior Invisibility. The Bar-Lgura can turn invisible until its concentration ends. All equipment it wears and carries with it is invisible, so it can keep attacking you from invisibility, which means it just has advantage on its attacks the whole time it's invisible, until you cast See Invisibility or something like that. So already this creature's incredibly difficult to kill. Now we have Teleport. No limit to how many times it can use this per day, but it's still an action that it has to use for this. 120 feet now, and it can still take the creatures with it. Pretty scary. Kidnap is the same. Move into the legendary actions now. Yes, we have legendary actions, so it can make an attack for 1 action, which is just a fist slam attack. It has Bilious Gas for 2 actions. It casts Poison Spray at 17th level. I got that from Orcus. I just kind of took, instead of casting Chill Touch, it casts Poison Spray. And then as for 3 actions, it can teleport. So that's gonna do it for the Bar-Lgura line of creatures that I've created. Hopefully you enjoyed these. If you have some suggestions on what you would do differently, or if you have your own idea for a variant stat block, please by all means leave it in the comments down below. I love reading stuff like that. I do take criticism very seriously, as long as it is not hateful and mean-spirited. If you want to say, like, this ability doesn't really have a place because this other ability does more damage, you should change it to do something like this. I appreciate stuff like that. Anyways, it has been DM Dungeon Mastery, back again with another episode of Creatures But Better. This was episode 26, so pretty crazy. We're coming along pretty well. I would like you guys to go check out HowtoDND's channel. He gave me a shout out on his stream last night. It was very nice of him. Please go watch one of his streams and tell him DM Dungeon Mastery sent you. Anyways, DM Dungeon Mastery signing out. I will see you guys in the next episode. Be sure to keep an eye on the community tab for the polls for the next creature rework. I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.